Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're going to talk about dehydrated orchids, very severe cases like the one you see right here. This is a Phalaenopsis that I just purchased. You might have seen it in Saturday's video, and it's clear that she's not having a good time. So we're going to fix it. I'm going to show you my routine and my technique, but also I will focus on a technique which I find very useful in these cases, actually the most important thing to do in these cases, and this is the removal of the flower spikes. So I do want to go into the logic of this technique and why I believe it works and the proof that I have, footage I filmed, and so on and so forth. I do want to insist on this because I did have a few comments in the past few months talking about this technique. I've always done this, I've always advised it, and there were a few people saying, you know what, there are some people who don't advise this, who oppose this, and that's fine. You don't actually have to do what I do. Do what you think is best for you. But when you influence people to do something, it is always a good idea to have some backing to your story. And the backing that you have needs to be as solid and logic as possible. If it's based on experience, at least demonstrate. Alrighty, with that little intro out of the way, let's actually talk about the orchid and what happened to it. So this is the big lip kind of harlequin type of orchid that I purchased about a month ago. We did the repot me videos. I repotted it in my first repot me video. Check it down below in the description. And if you look at that video, you'll see this orchid had quite a lot of root issues. I saved as many as I could, and I thought there were quite a lot saved. But you could see from what I show you here and from that video that the orchid was really suffering. It was really stressed. And now you can see by the appearance of the leaves that she's dehydrated. Now she's actually looking better because I put her on a rehydration schedule. If we check inside the pot, we can see that the orchid does have some roots. However, though, I'm not entirely sure how many roots survived. As I was saying, they were really in bad shape. So it is pretty clear to me that I need to intervene. Now, before reaching my conclusion, I did have to consider a few things that I think everybody should consider. Number one, did I actually water my orchid? And the answer was yes, I did water it. Do I have a lack of root system? Well, I do have roots, so theoretically that should help, but I'm not sure if I have enough roots. So this is something I need to check. And also, do I have structures that consume and deplete energy? Yes, I do. And these structures are pretty extensive. Look at that. This is a massive inflorescence, and you can see it's not really having a good time. It's not receiving enough moisture, enough sugars to open the buds. There's nothing else wrong. There is no pest. So through the process of elimination, I have two possible culprits: the flower spikes draining energy and the lack of roots, which we shall take a look at today. Now, why do I think flower spikes are a main source of energy drain? Well, this is where I'm gonna show you things. Now, if you've been in the hobby long enough, you might have heard about such a thing called happy sap. If you didn't hear about it, definitely you saw it. Ever noticed the little droplets that form sometimes underneath the leaves or on the new growths or even on the flower spikes, which are very sticky? Well, those droplets are actually sugars. They are produced by the orchid and they are actually used in the growing process. I have a more extensive video on it. Check it down below. I explain more about it then. It's a perfectly natural and normal phenomenon. It can have some bad effects in our growing spaces due to the limitations we have. Sometimes it needs to be removed, but that's a whole different story. The bottom line is, on many orchids, you will see these sticky droplets. And if you've ever wondered what they were, well, now you know. Have you ever noticed that the orchids have a pattern for this happy sap? It's always more abundant on new structures. For example, flower spikes. There are orchids which produce tons and tons of this sap on the flower spikes, on the buds sometimes, like the case of this Cattleya, but also Phalaenopsis can do it sometimes. Vandas can do it, Oncidiums can do it. I think pretty much all of the orchids we can grow at some point or another will display some of these sugary droplets. But it's not only the flower spikes, it's also the new growths. In the case of sympodial orchids, usually new growths are covered with the sap. You will see it a lot on the sheets, and not only, sometimes you will see it on the back of the leaves, not only with sympodials, but with monopodials as well. it will mainly be on the back of the leaves because that's where the breathing mechanism is, the stomatas, which are like pores in the structure of the orchids. Typically, orchid leaves, depending on the species or variety, have a thick cuticle protecting them. So on the upper side, unless we have damage, which can come from pest, but not only, we will not see a lot of happy sap unless it drops to the upper side. But on the underside is where we will see most of the happy sap, and also the sheaths, the growths while they're forming, while they're very tender, the flower spikes, the buds, those are things that don't really have a thick cuticle. However, though, you don't really see as much happy sap being produced on older structures. There might be a few drops here and there, but certainly when you compare it to a new structure, there is a massive, massive difference. Have you ever wondered why? Well, my theory, based on what I read, biology knowledge, experience, and all of those things, is that the new growths, whether they are flower spikes or new growths or new leaves even, they benefit from a lot of energy, a lot of sugars, a lot of attention overall from the orchid. This is where the future lies, in the new growth. So the orchid is pushing a lot of energy into those structures. Now, I did an experiment a few years ago, which will apply to what I'm saying right now. You know those blue Phalaenopsis? Well, I tried to recreate one and actually succeeded. Check the video down below. How I did it was make an incision in the flower spike, because I presumed that the flow of the sap will mainly be up towards the buds and towards the flowers. And that is why the vast majority of the paint will go into the flowers and buds, not into the leaves. So we did that, we colored some flowers, it actually worked, it proved that the sap was concentrated in the flower spike more, and a part of the sap was indeed recirculated in the leaves, but compared to the amount we had on the spikes, it was very, very little. So I drew the conclusion that the sap was actually concentrated towards the flower spikes and the buds, the new structures pretty much. I do still have that orchid. I actually had two orchids which I experimented with. I have them both and they're not blue actually. The sap was not recirculated all that much. It was actually focused on the new growth, which at that time was a flower spike. Anyway, so with all of these things in mind, I did conclude that a lot of energy goes into the flowers, spikes, and buds. And you don't need to see the droplets to know that. The name happy sap derives from the fact that the orchids produce it when they are most nourished. Also keep in mind some orchids produce more sap than others, or have thicker cuticles, or have a greater tendency to exude the sap. Some orchids do depend on the sap in nature. They attract ants, as I was saying, and in return, ants form colonies in their pseudobulbs and protect them. Anyway, so with some orchids, it is a given that you'll have sap, with others not so much. The state of the health has an important role as well, and as you can see, my little orchid is a little too sad and dehydrated and stressed to produce the happy sap. But it doesn't change the fact that the flower spikes are still draining more energy than they should from this orchid. At least this is my conclusion and my theory. So what do I need to do? Well, first of all, eliminate the stress source. And right now, the stress is the flower spike. So the first order of business is to cut the flower spikes because I care about the orchid more about the flowers. We can always make Phalaenopsis orchids rebloom, and I will actually link you down below to my video on how to rebloom Phalaenopsis. There is actually a little trick, an environmental trick. I'm saying this because I sometimes get comments, oh, I cut the flower spike and the orchid never rebloomed. That's not normal. Most of us rebloom Phalaenopsis, so do check that video out. It's a really easy trick, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna be able to rebloom your Phalaenopsis afterwards. Anyway, so I will cut the flower spikes as low as possible. In this instance, going as low as possible will make sure that none of these nodes will be tempted to actually sprout a branch or anything of the sorts. There is a low risk that this orchid will go into propagation mechanism. It will try to multiply whatever the cost might be, and I don't actually want her to do that because I'm pretty sure I can recover this orchid, and I'm also pretty sure that she cannot handle a keiki in this situation, which will drain even more energy than the flower spikes. So I'm not gonna cut it above a node or anything. I'm gonna cut it as low as I can go, leaving no node behind, as it were. So I have a sterilized pair of pruners here, and I'm going to make a clean cut. And there we go, the flower spikes are all gone. Also, as I was saying, I do want to check out the root system, see if any of the roots actually died in the process. I left quite a few questionable roots on this orchid, and there is a chance that some of them died. Being that this orchid is potted in organic material, it is even more important to make sure that I don't have any decomposing or rotting roots. So I will unpot it. It's okay, in a month it didn't actually have time to grab onto anything or adjust. I don't actually think roots have grown. So let's see. Oh yeah, look at this. Many of the roots are actually gone. Some roots are still okay, but many of them are questionable, even though still a little bit stiff. I'm going to do a complete clean out. Now that I got rid of those flower spikes, even if I don't leave too many roots on this orchid, I do have some viable roots to hydrate the orchid. So I'm gonna be a little bit more picky with what roots I leave on this orchid this time. So off camera, I'm gonna cut away everything that is mushy and that looks rather suspicious. So I'll come back when I'm done. And here we have it. No wonder the orchid was dehydrated with those big flower spikes. I will be repotting it back with this medium. It didn't really actually have time to degrade all that much in the past month, so no need to throw it away. I don't reuse organic media with other orchids because I don't think I can sterilize it properly. I simply don't trust myself to do that. I prefer to use new one. But with the very same orchid, this is medium which was not degraded. It's also orchiata bark here. I am perfectly okay to reuse it. And here we are. Now, because the vast majority of my good roots are on the surface, we're gonna revive a technique I didn't use in a lot of time because I didn't use organic medium. I do have a video on it, how to promote roots, something of the sort. If you wanna just have a laugh, look at that video. It's an older video. Anyway, I'll give you the gist now. With orchids which don't have too many roots, they only have maybe a few at the top, there is no point to water the entire pot when we're dealing with organic materials. The wetter the organic media stays, the faster it decomposes. Do I want to speed up the process? No. What I want is to maintain things rather moist at the top, not at the bottom. So for this reason, I will place a little bit of sphagnum moss on the top, particularly on this little root here. Let's patch it up real nice here. I'm not even gonna put sphagnum moss all over, just where I want it to be, because at some point I will remove it. I don't want this pot to have moss on top, it will just create algae. But for now, every day I will spray a little bit this moss to maintain it wet, and spray a little bit the top of the medium, but not enough to actually wet the bottom of the pot. And in a few months or so, this orchid will create a few roots, which will hydrate the orchid, so I will remove the top layer of moss, and pretty much things should return to normal. And there we have it. And before I let you go, let me actually show you the rootless orchid we had a month ago in the Repot Me video. There you go. If you watch that video, you'll see this orchid doesn't really have roots. It has two little roots. It's the mini Phalaenopsis. I had to remove the flower spike. She actually went through the very limpy situation period as well, but now she is perking up. She's not looking like brand new, but she is perking up. So things are going in the right direction for it, and I'm hoping to see some new roots sprouting very, very soon. Alrighty guys, and with that said, I think it's time to end. Thank you for watching, you know the drill. Like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, and other fun orchid subjects. And if you like YouTube to notify you whenever I upload a new video, just turn on notifications for my channel. Also, if you're curious about the setup that I use, products, and so on, I always link them in the description. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!